I'm 91 years old, and I'm going to tell you something that will change how you think about every decision you've ever made about where you live. At 73, I made a choice that I thought was smart, practical, the responsible thing to do. I sold the home where I'd raised my children, buried my wife, and lived for 47 years. Everyone said I was being sensible. My daughter was relieved. My doctor approved. 3 years later, I was sitting in my perfect assisted living apartment, and I realized I hadn't just sold a house. I'd sold my identity, my history, my will to live. But the real lesson didn't come until I was 86. And what happened that year taught me why home isn't just where you live, it's who you are. I'm 91 years old, and I'm going to tell you something that will change how you think about every decision you've ever made about where you live. Some of you might remember me from a few months back. The response to that video was overwhelming, and I'm grateful for it. But today, I need to talk about something I didn't mention then. Something more personal. Something that cost me more than I ever thought possible. At 73, I made a choice that I thought was smart, practical, the responsible thing to do. I sold the home where I'd raised my children, buried my wife, and lived for 47 years. Everyone said I was being sensible. My daughter was relieved. My doctor approved. My financial advisor called it the prudent move. 3 years later, I was sitting in my perfect assisted living apartment, 700 square feet of safety and convenience. And I realized I hadn't just sold a house. I'd sold my identity, my history, my will to live. But the real lesson didn't come until I was 86. And what happened that year taught me something about aging, about home, about who we become when we have nothing left to protect. I need you to hear this, because what I understand now, at 91, is that home after 70 isn't about real estate. It isn't about stairs or square footage or being close to hospitals. It's about survival. And I don't mean surviving in the way doctors talk about it. I mean surviving as yourself. People my age get moved around like furniture. We're handled, managed, transitioned, and we let it happen because we think we're being practical. Because we think listening to our children and our doctors is the wise thing to do. Because we've spent our whole lives being told that being sensible is the same as being right. I had lived in that house for 47 years. My wife Eleanor took her last breath in the bedroom we'd shared since 1968. My children measured their heights on the kitchen door frame, pencil marks going back 30 years. The garage still smelled like my son's first car, the one we rebuilt together the summer before he left for college. The garden had roses Eleanor planted the year we moved in. 30 years of roses, and I let a realtor put a sold sign on all of it. I told myself I was being smart. I told myself the memories would come with me. I told myself that home was a feeling, not a place, and I could feel at home anywhere. I was wrong about all of it. But I didn't know how wrong until I was 86 years old. And what I discovered that year changed everything I thought I knew about aging, about loss, about what it really means to have a home. But here's what nobody warns you about when they tell you to downsize and simplify. Eleanor died in the spring of 2012. Ovarian cancer, 8 months from diagnosis to gone. And somewhere in those dark weeks after the funeral, while I was still learning how to sleep alone in a bed we'd shared for 44 years, the conversation started. My daughter Rebecca would call every night. "Just checking in, Dad. How are you doing, Dad?" And somewhere around week 3, the real questions started. Are you eating? Are you sleeping? Don't you think that house is a lot for one person? My son flew in from Seattle. Sat me down at the kitchen table, said he was worried about the stairs, about me being alone, about what would happen if I fell and nobody found me for days. He'd read an article. He had statistics. My doctor, a man I'd trusted for 15 years, suggested it might be time to think about options. Somewhere with community, somewhere with support, somewhere safe. And I listened. Because I was 73 years old and my wife had just died and I was tired. So tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of making decisions. Tired of waking up every morning in a house full of her absence. So when Rebecca found a place, I said yes. When the realtor came, I signed the papers. When the movers showed up, I watched them put 47 years into boxes and load them onto a truck. The brochure called it independent living. What it really was, a waiting room with better lighting. Oh, it was lovely. Don't misunderstand me. Clean, modern, thoughtfully designed. Single floor, no stairs to worry about. Medical staff on call 24 hours. A dining room with 3 meals a day. Activities every afternoon. Bingo on Tuesdays. Movie nights on Fridays. A community of people just like me. Everything I needed and nothing I wanted. I had a lovely apartment, 700 square feet, a kitchenette I never used because why cook for one person when there's a dining hall? A bedroom with a view of the parking lot. A living room where I sat in my chair and watched television and waited for something I couldn't name. The first month, I thought I was adjusting. Everyone said it takes time. Give it time, Dad. You'll make friends. You'll find your rhythm. The second month, I thought I was depressed. Maybe I needed medication. Maybe I needed therapy. Maybe this was just grief, and grief takes as long as it takes. By the 6th month, I understood. I wasn't adjusting. I wasn't depressed. I was grieving a death no one could see, the death of who I had been. You see, I wasn't just Henry who lost his wife. I was Henry from the yellow house on Maple Street. Henry who could fix anything in his garage. Henry whose tomatoes were the envy of the neighborhood. Henry whose door was always open, whose kitchen always had coffee, whose grandchildren ran through the backyard every summer. I was Henry who had built something. 47 years of building. A life you could see, you could touch, you could walk through. In that apartment, I was just Henry. Room 412. The quiet one in the corner at dinner. The one who never signed up for activities. The one the staff smiled at with that particular patience they reserve for residents who haven't adjusted yet. I'd left everything behind. Eleanor's roses, the ones I'd promised to keep alive. The workshop where I'd built a cradle for my first grandchild. The kitchen door frame with 30 years of pencil marks. The porch where we'd watched 1,000 sunsets. I told myself I'd visit. I told myself the new owners would let me see the garden. I told myself I could go back whenever I wanted, but I never did. Because going back would mean seeing everything I'd given away, and I wasn't strong enough for that. So I sat in my 700 square feet and I watched myself disappear. And then at 86, something happened that made me understand everything. For 13 years, I had been fading. Not dramatically, not in ways that made headlines or required interventions, just quietly becoming less interested, less engaged, less present. I stopped reading books because what was the point? I stopped watching the news because it didn't concern me anymore. I stopped caring about meals, about activities, about the small daily rituals that make up a life. The staff noticed. They always noticed. They started checking on me more often, encouraged me to join things, suggested I might benefit from talking to someone. They were kind about it, but there's a look people give you when they've decided you're winding down, a gentleness that feels like goodbye. I had accepted it. This was just what happened. This was aging. This was the natural order of things. Then my grandson Michael came to visit. He was 34 that year, Rebecca's oldest. He'd been cleaning out her attic, helping her downsize now that her own kids had left home. And he'd found a box she'd kept. Things from the old house. Things she couldn't throw away, but couldn't look at either. He brought it to me on a Tuesday afternoon, set it on my little dining table and said, "Grandpa, I thought you might want these." Photos, of course. Eleanor and me on our wedding day. The kids as babies, Christmases and birthdays and summer vacations. I'd seen most of them before. They made me smile the way old photos do. Distant, pleasant, safe. But then Michael reached into the box and pulled out something wrapped in newspaper. And when I saw what it was, I couldn't breathe. It was a piece of wood, about 2 feet long, 6 inches wide, cut roughly from a wall. And on it, in faded pencil marks, were lines, dozens of them, with names and dates going back 30 years. Rebecca, age 4, 1976. Michael Sr., age 6, 1972. Rebecca, age 7, 1979. Little Michael, age 3, 1993. The kitchen door frame. She had cut it out of the wall before the new owners took possession. She had saved it for 14 years. And she had never told me. I held that piece of wood in my hands, and I wept. I wept like I hadn't wept since Eleanor died. Like I hadn't wept since the day I watched the moving truck pull away. Like I hadn't wept in 13 years of sitting in that apartment telling myself I was fine. Because holding that wood, I finally understood what I had lost. I didn't leave a house. I left the physical evidence that I had mattered, that I had built something, that my life had made marks on the world, literal marks, pencil lines on wood, proof that children had grown under my roof. That time had passed and I had witnessed it, that I had been there for all of it. In that apartment, there were no marks. Nothing I touched stayed touched. Nothing I changed stayed changed. The walls were painted the same beige they'd been painted for 1,000 residents before me. The carpet held no memory of my footsteps. The windows looked out on a parking lot that would look exactly the same long after I was gone. I was passing through. I was waiting, and I had been waiting for 13 years. Here's what the doctors don't tell you. Here's what the brochures for senior living never mention. Here's what your children don't understand when they worry about stairs and falls and being alone. Your body knows when you've stopped mattering. Your mind knows when there's nothing left to protect, nothing left to maintain, nothing left to build. And when they know, they start to let go. I was healthier at 73 than I was at 76. I was sharper at 76 than at 80. I lost more of myself in those 13 years of safety than I had lost in the previous decade of living in a house that's supposedly too big, too dangerous, too much for one old man. Because it turns out the danger wasn't the stairs. The danger was having nothing worth climbing them for. If you're under 70, I need you to hear this next part very carefully. If you have parents who are getting older, if you have grandparents still living in houses that seem too big for them, if you're the one making phone calls and reading articles and worrying about stairs and falls and what happens if, I need you to understand something that took me 13 years and a piece of wood to learn. We treat old people like problems to be solved. Dad's in a big house alone, that's a problem. Mom can't drive anymore, that's a problem. The yard is too much. The stairs are dangerous. The kitchen is outdated. Problem, problem, problem. And so we solve the problems. We find nice places with support staff. We move them closer to hospitals. We eliminate the risks. We optimize for safety and convenience and peace of mind. Our peace of mind. But have you asked what that house means to them? Have you asked who they are when they're there? Have you asked what they'll lose when they leave? My wife's roses died the year after I moved. 30 years of roses. Eleanor planted them in 1982, the year our daughter was born. She tended them every spring, and after she died, I tended them. They were the last living thing she had touched. The last thing that still needed me, the way she had needed me. Gone. Because nobody knew how to care for them like I did. Because nobody thought to ask if they mattered. That's what home is after 70. It's not square footage. It's not property value. It's not convenience or accessibility or being close to medical care. It's the place where you're still the expert, where you still have purpose, where you know which drawer sticks and which window needs to be lifted just so, where the walls remember what you've survived, where every room holds a story only you can tell. It's the place where you matter. And when you take that away from someone, when you move them somewhere safer and cleaner and more practical, you're not just changing their address, you're erasing their purpose. You're telling them, without meaning to, that their expertise is no longer needed, that their stories don't require a setting anymore, that they can finish out their days somewhere generic, somewhere interchangeable, somewhere that will forget them the moment they're gone. Here's what I wish someone had told me. Here's what I wish I had known before I signed those papers and watched the moving truck pull away. Every modification you make to help an elderly person stay home is worth 10 times more than moving them somewhere better. Every grab bar in the bathroom, every ramp over the front steps, every meal delivery service, every medical alert button, every hour of hired help for yard work or cleaning or whatever they can no longer do themselves. It's not just practical, it's existential. Every adaptation that lets them stay is a vote for their continued existence. A message that says, you still belong here. This is still your place. You are still needed. The cost of keeping someone home, it's not nothing. I understand that. There are real considerations, real limitations. Sometimes there are genuine safety concerns that can't be modified away. Sometimes the mind goes in ways that make staying impossible. I'm not naive about that, but I'm telling you from the other side of a choice I can never unmake, that the bar for moving someone should be so much higher than we make it. The default should be, how do we make this work? Not, where do we move them? Because here's the truth nobody says out loud. We don't die from old age. We don't die from stairs or big yards or being alone. We die from losing reasons to stay alive. And for most of us, after 70, home is the biggest reason we have left. It's the last place where we're still ourselves. The last place where we have a role that nobody else can fill. The last place where our presence makes a difference. Take that away, and you're not helping someone live longer. You're just helping them wait to die in a nicer facility. I'm 91 now. I can't go back to Maple Street. Someone else is making marks on those walls. Someone else's children are measuring their heights on a new door frame. Someone else is tending whatever replaced Eleanor's roses. That chapter is closed. I made my choice 18 years ago, and I have to live with it. Or rather, I have to finish living with it. But that piece of wood, that door frame my daughter saved without telling me, it hangs on my wall now, right across from my chair, right where I can see it every morning when I wake up and every night before I sleep. Rebecca, age 4, 1976. Michael, age 6, 1972. Little Michael, age 3, 1993. It reminds me. Every single day, it reminds me. I was here. I built something. I mattered. Those marks exist because I existed. Those children grew because I provided a place for them to grow. That life happened because I made a home where it could happen. I can't get those years back. The 13 years I spent fading in that apartment, waiting for nothing, becoming no one. Those years are gone. But I can make sure they meant something. I can make sure someone else doesn't lose what I lost. That's why I'm talking to you today. If you have parents getting older, I'm asking you to change the question. Don't ask what's the safest option. Don't ask what gives you the most peace of mind. Don't ask what makes the logistics easier. Ask what's the option that lets them stay who they are. Ask what that house means to them. Ask what they'll lose if they leave. Ask who they are inside those walls that they can't be anywhere else. And then do everything in your power. Spend every dollar. Make every modification. Hire every helper. Do whatever it takes to let them stay. Because you're not just preserving a building. You're preserving a person. And if you're getting older yourself, if you're starting to hear those conversations, if your children are worried, and your doctor is suggesting, and everyone seems to agree that it's time to be practical, I need you to hear me. Don't let anyone convince you that practical is the same as right. Don't let anyone tell you that safety is the only thing that matters. Don't let anyone reduce your life to a risk assessment. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is play it safe. Sometimes the thing that looks like wisdom is actually surrender. Sometimes staying in a house that's too big and too old and too much work is the very thing keeping you alive. Fight for your home. Fight for your purpose. Fight for the place where you still matter. The yellow house on Maple Street is still standing. My grandson drives me by sometimes. New paint, different color now. The garden's been redesigned. There's a swing set in the backyard that wasn't there before. And every time we pass it, I think the same thing. That house kept me alive for 47 years. Not because of the roof or the plumbing or the property value, because of who I got to be inside it. I was a husband there, a father, a grandfather, a neighbor, a man who could fix things, who grew things, who built things, a man whose door was always open and whose coffee was always hot and whose grandchildren knew exactly which room was theirs. I was home. Don't wait until you're 91 to understand what that means. Don't wait until you're holding a piece of wood with faded pencil marks, weeping for a life you gave away. Don't wait until it's too late to fight for the place that makes you who you are. Home isn't where you live. Home is where you're still alive. This channel is for people like me, sharing what we've learned so you don't have to learn it the hard way. If this meant something to you, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me about your home, your parents, your story. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone making these decisions right now, send it to them. Because some lessons shouldn't take 91 years to learn.